Hello Tool Kids, this is Greg Myers at Tools for Teens, and today we're going to walk around cars and trucks and see some important things that you need to know. Well, the first thing that you need to know is how to get under the hood, and the way to do that is to find a little lever near the steering wheel that has a little picture of an open trunk on it, and you pull that little lever and it helps you to get in. You'll hear a pop. Now every car, when you get to the hood, is going to have popped open just a little bit, and then what you do is you reach under there with your hand, and there will be some sort of a lever that you can pull and push to the side, and that little lever like this, okay, that little lever is what lets you open the hood the rest of the way. It's there as a safety thing in case accidentally the hood pops open a little bit and then the wind catches it. Otherwise the hood would fly up and be in your way while you're driving and could cause an accident. Here we are on my old truck, and you'll find a lever somewhere on every one of these. Some vehicles have a hood prop, okay, that you have to bring down to hold the hood open. Some of them have springs that hold the hood open. Here's the safety mechanism on this one. So you'll find it somewhere on everything. Every engine has a piston going up and down, and gas and air come in through the intake side, which is up near the air cleaner and the carburetor and the fuel injector. And then what happens is the piston goes down and pulls that in, pulls the air in, and then as it comes back up again, it compresses that air and gets ready for the spark plug to ignite that mixture after the valves close. It's coming up, boom! You see that ignition? Okay, and then after the ignition, what happens is that the piston gets pushed down, like it's getting pushed down, and then what happens is it goes around and it starts coming back up, and another valve opens and it pushes the exhaust gases out. Watch this. And that all happens so rapidly, and that's what's going on inside of an engine. Okay, well, let's look. It seems like just this incredibly complicated thing, but we can take this apart and look at it piece by piece, and then you'll be ahead of the game when it comes to looking under the hood. Well, here's something pretty bright. This is a battery, and every car and truck has a battery in it to start the motor and to turn on electrical things that happen in the car, and there'll always be a little plus sign and a little minus sign, and those will be important when you're jump starting a car or changing the battery. And changing a battery is not a very hard thing to do. There's usually a couple of bolts that hold the battery down, and then there's the terminals on the battery, okay? And as often as not, when you have a problem with a car not starting, because it just says, I don't wanna, or whatever, it has to do with these terminals being dirty. So something to look at when you're looking under the hood. Okay, well, what else have we got here? Well, there's this great big thing, okay, and you'll see something like this on every vehicle, and underneath it is where the air gets processed to go into the motor, and that's either called a fuel injection system, where the gas gets squirted into the mixed with the air, or it's something called a carburetor. Now, the air has to come in somewhere, and it has to be really clean air. So you'll see some kind of thing like this, which is the air cleaner, and it has little snaps on it, and you unsnap those, and inside of that is a little filter, like the filter in your house, the furnace filter in your house, only smaller. And those need to be cleaned every now and again. Here's the air filter on my old car, and there's the battery over there. So we're starting to see things. And underneath this air filter, right straight underneath it, I don't know if you can see that, maybe you can, there's the carburetor, which mixes the air and the gasoline together. Well, while we're over here, what else can we see? Well, we can see this thing down here, and you'll see something like this on every car or truck. And this is called an alternator. And what an alternator is this is a device that spins around and makes electricity to keep the battery charged up. And you have to have an alternator, and you have to have a fan belt to twirl the alternator around. Here we are on the modern car again, and there's that alternator way down in there, and look, there's a fan belt. It's a little different kind of fan belt, but nevertheless it's a fan belt. Well, if you're going to have all that electricity whirling around in there, then you need to have some way of controlling that electricity in case there's a problem, okay? And that would be the fuses. And the fuses are usually in some sort of a box that's underneath the hood, okay? Okay, now this is the fuse box in my truck, and you can see all these little things in here are called fuses. And then there's usually something like this little thing that you can put on here to pull the fuses out. And you look at the fuse, and there'll be a little metallic, a little metal strip in there. And what you want to see is that little metal strip is not broken. Okay, let's look inside. This is one of those little fuses, and there's a number on the top. This one says 30 on it, which means it's a 30 amp fuse. And this is important because that's how much electricity can go through the circuit before that fuse blows. Now you see that little U-shaped thing in there? Well, that's the actual fuse. And if too much electricity goes through that, it'll melt and burn out. So there is a fuse for every circuit in the car. There's a different fuse for air conditioning and for the gauges and the flashers and the wipers. And if one of these things is not working in the car, then you might go into the fuse box and take a look and see, because they're all labeled pretty well, if any of those fuses is blown. Okay, now we're going to look at places that you can fill up fluids in your car. And we're looking at the brake fluid reservoir right now. And it'll say that on it. And you can see that there's levels on there. And you fill up the brake fluid to those levels. And the brake fluid goes all over to each corner of the car and pushes on the brakes to make the brakes expand and gets the car to stop. Here's an older style brake fluid reservoir, and it also has something called a master cylinder. And the master cylinder has a pump inside of it on all cars, and that pump is what actually pushes the brake fluid out to the corners of the car. Well, what else can we see here? Oh, well, this thing is the power fluid pump for steering. Okay, and if you have power steering in your car, you're going to have one of these, and there will always be a knob on the top for you to fill with power steering fluid, which is different than brake fluid. Well, what else do we have? Well, we have a place to put oil in the car. Well, there's always going to be some type of an oil filler cap on there. And a funny joke is, see how it says 710 there? And somebody comes in to the mechanic and says, what do I do with the 710 cap? Well, let's see what that is. Whoa, that's the oil. That's where you put the oil. Little dad joke there. Well, that's where you put the oil in. And there's got to be a place where you check the oil level. Okay. So there's always going to be some sort of a little thing like this that you can pull out, okay, and look at to see what the oil level is on there, okay. And in this case it says that it's full. Okay, there's markings on the dipstick that help you to figure that out. So every mechanic has their trusty red rag with them. Okay, so we're going to wipe that off, and you can see the different levels on here. It says full up there, and it says add there. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. Anyhow, let's put this back in here now that it's clean, and then we'll pull it out again and take a look to see if there's oil in there. And it says, uh-oh, we should add a little bit of oil in there, about a quart of oil to get it up to the full line. Okay, so now we know we need to add some oil to this motor. Here we are with the new car, and it has a nice yellow dipstick, hard to ignore it, and that's right on the front of the motor. Okay, but you're going to find it on just about every motor. Okay, while we're looking at dipsticks, let's look at transmissions. Okay, now on some modern new cars, they don't even have a transmission dipstick, but if the car is just a few years older, the key word for today is dipstick. Then it will have a dipstick, and that dipstick will be towards the back of the motor, closer to where the passenger compartment is. There's the dipstick on that one. And if your car has a transmission dipstick, what you want to do is get the car heated up a little bit, actually put the parking brake on and put it in gear and let it circulate in there for a little bit, and then check your transmission fluid level. Okay, somewhere near the front of the motor, you're also going to find, in many cases, a place where you put fluid in for the windshield washers, and you'll see a little sign on it that says windshield washing fluid on there, and that'll be somewhere on every car. And sometimes on bigger cars you'll have a reservoir in the front, and sometimes you'll also have one back in the back. Another thing that you'll find near the front of the motor is a place to put coolant, antifreeze or coolant in the front of the motor. And you better take a look at the instruction manual for that and determine whether or not it's safe to put fluid in there. When you try to do that on a hot motor, you might get a big surprise of lots of hot steam, so you got to be very careful when you do that. On little bit older cars, you'll find this. This is the radiator, okay, and you'll find this is a radiator cap, and this is that thing they want you to be very careful of when you do it on a hot motor. But this is where you put the coolant in. Let's see how it's looking in there. Could use a little bit more coolant in there, huh? Yeah. Okay, we can do that. When you start driving, what you should do is sit down with the owner's manual for that car, if it's available, and read through it cover to cover, because you'll learn all sorts of little things about that car, and it'll make you a much better driver. Okay, and there's a table of contents that tells you what to do if there's troubleshooting, and it tells you where all the different controls are. You could have this car for your whole driver's lifetime and not know about some little buttons that are on there. So that's something that's important. Another thing that's very important is when the car starts, look inside at the dashboard and you'll see all kinds of little lights that are turned on and flashing and things, and you'll notice what different kinds of issues your car might have. Okay, and a lot of those little lights that are on there to tell you before you start the car that those systems are working. Now what we'll do is we'll start the car and those little lights will go out. Well, right now you can see that the light for the doors being open is on and the light for the seat belts is on, but all the other lights that were on here have gone out. Okay, so check how much fuel is in there and check things like how hot it is as the car warms up, and you can check all kinds of other things like fuel economy and things like that. Now, somewhere in every car, if you have a flat tire, you're going to need the tire changing things that we showed you in another video. But where are they hidden? Well, they're either under the seat somewhere or they're behind a panel somewhere. So here they are. Here's your jack, and here's your other tire changing things that you might need if you're going to change a tire. The tire itself might be usually under a hatch in the rear deck, or it might be under the car itself. So you'll have to look at the owner's manual to figure that out. Now, every car is going to have at least one license plate, for sure in the back and a lot of times in the front too. And those license plates need to be changed every so often, and every so often you just need to change a sticker. Every year you need to buy another sticker to put on there. The license plates themselves are fastened on by 2 bolts, and they're usually pretty simple to get off with just a flat blade screwdriver. Well, thanks for taking a walk around Cars and Trucks with me at Tools for Teens. Hopefully this will take some of the mystery out of what's going on under the hood. We'll see you next time at Tools for Teens.